Hi, and welcome to Magic Numbers. This is episode number 100. Whee! And with that celebration out of the way, we can move on to the meat and potatoes. Before we go into that, obviously, thanks to all the patrons and thanks to mtgzone.com for sponsoring me. But I'm not going to dwell on it too much because today I have a guest, and it's a great guest. And we're going to be talking about Khans of Tarkir. And I'm here with the Ben Sack. Hello, Ben.
Hi, how's it going?
Oh,
We've been like rival guests on limited resources, so it's
yeah, no,
actually
we always compete for the Lemmies, but this year, since I'm sure that they're gonna give it to Death Sea for some reason, hashtag
what?
nepotism. I'm sure they're going to give it to Death Sea, so we don't have to compete. We can actually unite against that front of hatred that they built against us.
It's always been a friendly rivalry rather than hatred. So hopefully we can kind of bury that here.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we buried it a long time ago, and if we have created any vibes of rivalry, only people who were really not in the know could figure out that it was not that it was actually serious. But yeah, it's always a pleasure. Somehow they always also cluster us, and they give us one after another in the limited resources, because that's where probably most people know you from, limited resources. But what they might not know, especially if they don't listen very carefully, is that you are actually an ex-pro player with credentials in Pro Tours and GPs with some GP victories, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, a couple GP victories, both limited, and a top 8 of one of the early Pro Tours. Also, that was actually when they used to only have one format, so it was actually also a draft Pro Tour. So definitely limited is part of my kind of claim to fame, I guess, with Magic.
But you're also a theoretician, or you are a game designer yourself, so you understand not only Magic from the perspective of a player, but also Magic from the perspective of someone who does different games and understands how things are designed around and understands the intricacies of game design. You're also a sort of Magic historian because you've been there for forever and you never stopped playing. Like I had a retirement between 2005 and 2017, 18, 19, and you never had that. You just went all through the periods of Magic. That's
Yeah, I think I might have played every limited format like at the time that it was a format. Like I because I don't think I definitely took some constructed breaks at different points, but I don't think I ever took a limited break. So from the context perspective, I've seen kind of like how limited, specifically draft or how that's changed over time, and it's very interesting. I mean, I think in some ways they've actually kind of got it pretty formulaic now. I wouldn't say like it's draft formats are different to each other, but I think if you think of all the draft formats like a bell curve, they're all sitting within the same kind of like section of the bell curve now, rather than being as kind of varied as they used to be. And in general, that's good because I think they've found a good spot.
Yeah, I think that I actually wrote a thread on that today, where they went for maximizing the average quality of the set and limiting the variance. But through that, you will also lose probably some of those 10 out of 10 sets. But I'd
Yeah,
rather have maybe fewer tens, but zero threes,
I
because
mean,
I don't.
yeah, I think occasionally they do kind of shoot for the moon. I would say that Neon Dynasty is actually one that like plays quite like interestingly. There's quite a lot of depth there that isn't normally in most formats. Anyway, that's just the most recent one where I feel like they actually
uh,
really went a little hard.
I think that that's because David Humphrey sevens are just nines.
Yeah, that's true in general. I mean,
Because if you would
yeah,
mention if you would say that, probably would be like Kaldheim, a Neon Dynasty. For me, it's Ikoria forever, and these are all Dave Humphrey sets. Good news for us, Thunder Junction. He's the head designer on that one, so we can look forward next year.
So actually, like in a previous job, Dave Humphries was my boss, and one of the interesting bits is like I think like the funny thing is his first set lead, I believe, is Avacyn Restored, and that is actually kind of historically one of the worst limited sets of all time. I like as in of modern draft formats. And it's so funny that he's actually kind of like, I mean, like you're totally right. His late sets are essentially all bangers all the time, and I think he's figured out exactly what he likes to do with the limited set. But he didn't. It wasn't always that way. His first one was actually not that great.
Well, you have to learn somewhere. You have to learn somewhere, and glad that he put the first one behind him. And also that means, if we are complaining about sets from someone that had their first set design recently, there is hope that that person in the future will become one of the best limited designers
For
in history,
sure,
which is a very refreshing thing, and which is something we should be thinking before lashing criticism at people who design sets for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward next year because Michael Majors is going to make his first design lead in Modern Horizons 3, and that's going to be also an arena. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Ooh, yeah,
how
definitely.
that's going to work, because I know he's like an amazing player. Let's see how the set design philosophy is working at the same time. But okay, I mean, anything else that we need to add as your background?
No, I mean, I think some of the other stuff not really relevant here. So let's just get to it.
Okay, let's move on to Khans of Tarkir, because that's why we are here. That's what we want to talk about. I never played it, and I was in my retirement in 2014, and I heard about it a lot, because every now and then when you consume as much limited content as I do, and that means basically all of it in terms of podcasts, including some very, very niche foreign language limited podcasts, because why wouldn't I do that? When you do that, you hear frequently people put Khans of Tarkir as one of their all-timers. And then in preparation for the set to be released, I look in the spoiler and I was like, oh my God, this is just a bunch of Fs. And then on the other hand, like, if Corticals, if Marsha and Louise, if Lords of Limited tell me that this set is a banger, I believe them. It's just that we are operating in a completely different card evaluation compared to what is being currently released. So I said, I can't do it on my own, because my experience of the card evaluation is all Dominaria upwards when the whole design principles have changed. So I need someone to help me with context. And I thought, wow, Ben Sek, that's like probably the best person I could get.
Yeah,
and there we are.
And it's interesting you say that, you have a look at the set and there's a lot of Fs. I think there is kind of two schools of thought about, like, how they create limited formats, where, like, do you want the 23rd card, like, whatever the last card in your deck, for you to be really struggling and to be kind of like trying to be creative about either some underused kind of ideas, or like, do you actually want like to have 28, 29, 30 playables and kind of be able to be much, much more efficient and the decks to be much more coherent? And I have a soft spot for formats that are actually like generally like lower power level, because it makes the drafting itself like a little bit more interesting, at least in my eyes, where you're actually like trying to kind of like squeeze a lot of value out of generally underplayed cards. And to me, that's actually like a limited skill that's like fun, at least in my head. That being said, I think basically now the fail rate is very low in modern sets, and I think you're more likely to get like non-functional draft decks with old sets like Khans of Tarkir. Like, you actually like the decks you have that are terrible actually are going to happen more often.
Yeah, that's a very I started my drafting in like Stronghold Exodus era, so I do remember Mercadian Masks draft or Odyssey block, and there you will frequently end up with like something that completely doesn't function. So I do remember those times, and obviously we don't have that anymore. And actually, it is very interesting to see how Khans of Tarkir are going to work on Best of One, because I think that this theory of making sure that in the set you will have like around 23 plus minus 4 playables might be actually better for best of one than having 29 ±3 playables when you always are guaranteed to have a deck that has enough playables. So because in best of one, that frequently will lead to those ultra streamlined decks being dominating the Mythic, because people are drafting in a weak pod or something. Sure. and maybe having fewer playables available and a lot of chaff and a lot of creativity might be actually a better idea.
Yeah, I think I agree in general. I mean, but also I think there's a lot of play in this set, more than most sets, as in like how you sequence your creatures, how you deploy your mana. This is actually much more. You have to understand the tactics of how you deploy your things, and we'll go through it. Creature sizing is definitely part of that.
Today's slides are very loose, and in terms of we are not going to have a rigid structured representation. We're going to chat about the format, but first, before we move to that, I told that this is a different design. I think that at least since Dominaria, there is this sort of like a blueprint for a set, and they tick certain boxes. Oh, here is our 2-mana 1/1 black common creature that makes opponent discard a card. Here is our 3-mana 2/2 blue flyer with some kind of a making extra cardboard upside that's going to be busted independently of what that extra cardboard upside is going to be. Here is our unplayable 4-mana green aura that gives reach for some reason and has some extra thing. And all those things are coming into the set. And because of that, the stats of the set are going to be certainly a bit similar. And because I'm doing the analysis of the removal for every set before it's getting released, just to see how a shock is going to line up with the current set, I did it for all the other sets, and I know that there are certain features that are quite uniform. Like, for example, I know that there's going to be around 10% of creatures at common that have toughness more than 4, so 5 or greater. And then we see Khans of Tarkir in this blue, and we see that there's 27% of creatures in that set have toughness of 4 or 5 or more, and a bunch of them are O5s for some weird reason. Those creatures O5s, I don't remember last time O5 was made. Maybe that was Theros Beyond Death or something. There's an 06 in the LCI, but that's an 06 that attacks as a 6/6, or because it deals damage according to its toughness. So yeah, you don't build those kind of things.
I think there is a reason for it. We'll get into the specifics, but there are a lot of morph creatures, and with morph creatures, generally they start off, let's say, they start off at 2/2 almost by definition, and they always, in most cases, get bigger. So you kind of need to have cards that play kind of relatively safely defensively against some of those cards. And that's, I think, the thinking around having the creature sizing like that, so that you actually don't get completely run over when someone gets to unmorph, and you need to be able to deal with it somehow. I think that's, at least in theory, that's how I'd approach it.
I think that that definitely there is this playing around, and morph is probably the most central kind of concept of the set, and I think that they are the linchpin mechanic. We're going to move to that in a second. Another thing that is interesting is how off it is in terms of the numbers on what is the cumulative amount of certain toughness in the set, and again, probably because of the morph. But in normal sets right now, and this graph shows you how many creatures are killed by a spell that deals X damage. In normal sets, we have around 50% of the creature that are killed by a shock, at common at least. Khans of Tarkir, 37%. Now, yes, of course, some of the creatures will be played as morphs, so actually shock would have been an insane card in that format, because it would kill every 3-drop, and that's probably why you don't have a shock in this set. But still, it's shocking to see how all the removals are lagging behind their efficiency. All those conditional damage removals are lagging behind the efficiency that you see currently. So your 2-mana deal 3 damage spell kills around 75% of creatures in modern sets. It's only 61% in Khans of Tarkir. That's quite a big difference, and you can see those numbers in a better detail for all those sets. And again,
in general, removal is worse. It's probably the clearest through line that you see in limited, that removal was a lot worse, even let's say 5 years ago, and even beyond that, it's much the deterioration continues all the way back to the beginning of Magic. I think in modern times they've just realized that interaction is actually kind of fun and kind of necessary for the power creep they've put into the creatures, and so it's a balancing act. As you said, there are more bad creatures, so therefore there can be more bad removal. So it's paired in some way.
Yeah, I think that that also currently the creatures will just do 5 things when they ETB already, so the removal has to be efficient, because if you don't at least kill them efficiently once they already created a 1/1, pinged something for 1, and then made you discard a card, then you're definitely dead if you don't deal with that kind of threat.
Yeah, and actually just quickly to kind of +1 that, there's a lot less card advantage in the common cards in general back in the day. It's actually pretty hard to actually get card advantage. Nowadays, there's a card advantage everywhere. Everything creates cardboard or creates draws more than one card, or there's a lot of tricks that kind of are hard to that basically allow you to get more 2-for-1s or better. So what you'll find in this set and sets around it is that you'll actually run out of things to do a lot of the time, because your card flow is much lower, because there's less mana sinks and things like that. It's a much more kind of it's a bit of a desert in the mid and late game sometimes with the things you're playing.
I was quite happy with giving flying for 3 mana to my 2/1 and jamming for 3 turns in a row, because we all were drawing lands, and then I drew a Treasure Cruise, and all of a sudden the game was over, basically. Because
Treasure Cruise is the big kind of difference here, obviously.
Yeah. And again, it's the same with the 5 toughness creatures. This is way out of the range that we've seen in the last sets. Insanely out of range in terms of how much it was there. So I made this thing, and it's a very ugly thing. It's a map of the mechanics, and it says Lost Caverns of Ixalan also, because I adapted old presentation and I didn't bloody change the name of the set. How many times it happens? It happens every single presentation I make on new set. It does happen. I'm still surprised it doesn't say Wilds of Eldraine for some reason. But okay, let's pretend that this says Khans of Tarkir. People love mistakes, and that's good to put them in your slides. At least I managed to put the right mechanics in, and I basically did it sort of across the control to aggressive spectrum. We do have Prowess and Delve as a sort of controlling ones, and Raid and Outlast and Warrior Typal as a sort of aggressive one. Then there's Ferocious, which can be pretty aggressive but has some controlling aspects to it. And there's Morph, which is just the central thing for the set. Do you agree with that? Because again, I didn't play this format, so I'm just trying to picture it based from the perspective of as if I was reviewing a brand new set, because that's a brand new set for me.
Yeah, I think generally the mapping you have for kind of controlling to aggressive is correct. What I will say is I think Outlast is probably more controlly than you have here. Raid is by far the most aggressive. I put it all the way to the right. Whereas I think Outlast in general, while it does kind of help bring the game to a conclusion, because generally if you outlast a little bit, you'll get to the point where your creatures become overwhelming. It actually gums up the game in a way that can slow the game down. And so you see some of the Outlast decks that are actually grindier. What they want to do is actually stop the aggressive decks.
The hint might be in the name.
Yes. Like so yeah, I might have that a little bit to the left, but look, overall I think you're generally right.
I also wanted to have them close because I think that they overlap in a way, because there is a bunch of warriors with the Outlast and there is a bunch of warriors with Raid, and then you might be getting some of those mechanics overlapping in a way. Is that something
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
I'm now actually realizing I never made a slide for the warrior title, so we'll have to improvise it as you go along.
It's pretty simple. It is exactly how it is.
Yeah, no, I just don't have the numbers. But let's start with the first mechanic, and now you can give your spiel about Morph, because I think that you will have quite a lot to say about it. Because I definitely think that yes, this mechanic is the thing that defines the format here because of how prevalent it is and everything. So I try to also avoid any content about Khans of Tarkir before our presentation. But today I gave up and I didn't have anything to listen to on a dog walk, and I listened to limited level ups, and I think I understand the format a bit better than someone who would be completely naive. Also, I played one draft, so I know more or less how the format operates. But okay, can you give me the idea of the morph?
Yeah. So for those who don't know the mechanic, I'm just going to kind of let you know what it does. Basically, anything with morph you can play face down for three mana, and it's a 2/2 when it's face down, and then sometimes it always has a morph cost, which means that at any time that you pay that morph cost, it will turn face up. And so the interesting thing there is there is a focus around the power and toughness of 2, and so a lot of like how you're kind of like thinking about creature sizing has to do with, can it trade with morphs, can it block morphs with that like profitably, and things like that. So that's the first level of it. The second level of it is that generally, because it's a 3 mana investment and then a future investment over another turn, and it's always a creature, it nearly always favors kind of being on the play. It's one of the things that I think is almost a truism about morph sets, is that because you get to unmorph quicker, or because you can threaten to unmorph, like a lot of times, let's say I play a morph on turn 3, and then you respond by playing a morph on turn 3, and I untap, and then I attack. Now, as with everything, all the advantages with me, because if I can unmorph it for profit, you have no kind of comeback there, and that's going to be true for every turn of the game, like from that point. And so what I would say is morph definitely favors the person on the play, or the person who's being more aggressive. One thing that changes with Khans of Tarkir, there's actually 5 common like shard-based like morph creatures, and they all make a lot of impact. And actually, I would say a lot of the morph interactions in limited are around kind of knowing which of the morph creatures are available at common, and especially which ones are going to blow you out.
Yeah. So obviously, I had also, and for no apparent reason whatsoever, I had the Treasure Cruise there that doesn't have morph, it has Delve. I watched the stats of the morph, and there are 35 creatures that have morph. And what I noticed is that it is focused in Simic, even though it's like in every color. Simic has a special kind of link with morph. Is there a deck that can abuse it? Because I saw this enchantment for 2 mana that gives morphs +0/+1.
Yes.
I think it would have been much worse if it gave +1/+0. The +0/+1 looks like a pretty busted thing in the world of 2/2s everywhere.
I think that card particularly is good. I think it's Secret Plans. I think it's the name of the card.
Yeah, I think we have it on the slide next.
That card is actually good on many levels. Firstly, it's 2 mana, so it can be deployed before any of the morph interactions happen. So you know, if you can see a theoretical turn where I play it on turn 2, and then on turn 3 I morph, and now I have a 2/3 morph, and you would, let's say, play a morph, and now I can attack with the morph even without having to unmorph it, with almost no risk. So I think it's a very good card. In general, like Simic has more morphs because they wanted to have just one color pair that has like just you can expect like a wider array of morph possibilities. One thing also they made sure is most of the unmorph costs are 5 and 6. That's not completely true, but like in general, there's a lot. They're not that many at like 1 through 4, with the exception of the ones that reveal cards.
I think that the rule from what I got is that it will take at least 5 mana to flip it into something that will eat opposing morph.
Right.
So if it's under 5, it will flip into I don't know a 27-2, but it will always be a 2, or it will flip into a 0-5, but not a 2-5.
Right.
So for it to kill the opposing morph, you have to pay at least 5 mana for the flip. And that's like a rule.
Yes. So what I will say is, I think one of the common mistakes that people did back then is they overvalued the morph itself, as in they overvalued like, oh, hold on, if I just get to 5 mana or 6 mana, and I unmorph, I'm going to like, I should always wait, is what. But actually, a lot of times, I think the way it plays out, because playing 3 and 6 or 3 and 5 is so much tempo, so much effectiveness. If your opponent is able to kind of like read what morphs you have by how you've kind of played out your hand, and are never run into a situation where you're going to get an advantage, a card advantage, because you run your morph into a bigger one, you're often incentivized not to morph a creature a lot of times. A lot of those creatures, you're better off like just playing it on their face-up turn, because you're essentially getting a bargain if you do it on the turn, because 3 plus 6 in this case of Woolly Loxodon is 9. Obviously, that's like not that's now if you just played it on turn 7, the math doesn't work exactly like that, but like you've got to remember that don't overvalue the fact that you have a hidden trick in many cases. Sometimes it's just worth trading,
especially with the ones that don't get any kind of flip
right
ETB or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
And there are some of them that have an ETB, or when you flip them, it does the same thing, like the 2/2 that makes 3/1/1s in Mardu. No.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, here there are some specifics. I think what I meant here is there is this cycle of the 3 colored common ones, the morphs, and they are quite important that they have morph, because maybe on turn 6 even you won't have enough colors to flip them. How often do you play like full 3 color decks in this format? Is it more like 2 colors with a splash for those 3 color cards, or
I mean, in general, I think most decks have 3 colors, but I think you're totally right in that if you're making the best decks, they are generally 2 colors with a splash, rather than like using the wedges that are there, because it allows you to have better mana. Like if you have like many equal amounts of cards of every color, like it forces your mana to be kind of more diverse, and also creates more variance in your mana base. So generally, when you're thinking about like these decks, even though most decks have 3 colors or more, so in some cases, you still should be thinking about it as in kind of like 2 color, like focusing it on 2 colors, because it allows you to have better mana, and like the chance of like having kind of card stranded in your hand, chance of it like just requiring a perfect like draw of land on to get it to morph on the the exact right turn, or play the card on the exact right turn, is just less pressure. So my advice is think of it kind of like a 2+1 set, even though there's a lot of powerful cards that are 3 color. You end up 3 color a lot. That's for sure. But just make sure your mana isn't kind of like built that way.
Yeah, because I did the maths on that, and Streets of New Capenna had a much better mana in terms of how much of it you got per pod, because then the Trilands and Streets of New Capenna were commons.
Yeah.
And you could just get probably any number of them. And still people didn't play 3-color decks. Although side note, I think it was a mistake from most of them by not prioritizing the good mana bases. But yeah, people just thought, okay, this is not a real 3-color set. While this one has weaker mana that you don't have as many ways of fixing, and we will go to that, I guess, in a second. And yet people played it as a 3-color set then. So maybe something to do with the speed. The longer the games, the more time you have to get your mana and to play your ponyback brigades.
I mean, also the power level of the 3-color cards in the higher rarities makes people like there's a lot of draws in the rares and or uncommons to some extent. I think mythics are already out by now.
They're definitely mythics. I saw some.
Yeah. I couldn't remember when mythics hit, but yeah. So I a lot of the rares are very, very good in both a constructed and a limited sense, and so that's why the mana fixing is actually important, because you have to be ready to be able to kind of pick up some the delta between the power level of commons versus rares is much larger here than I think it is in traditional sets.
Yeah, that's and okay. So I also selected that. I selected all those 3-color ones have a 1 mana discount from unmorphing. Basically, that's it. No?
Yeah,
that's the only thing. This card weird, but I put it as something that has an mana making ETB ability, but I still don't know how often I would play it as a morph, because I mean
almost never.
Because only when I have the secret plans or something, no?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you create this kind of moment where you actually generate, because if you play it as a morph and then you flip it up for 2, you're up 1 and you can tap it, so you're actually up 2 for that turn.
Okay.
So they're usually you don't get that, but because morph counts as a creature already being in play, you kind of get haste on the mana ability, right? So what it does do is it allows you to kind of skip to 6s and 7s, which Temur specifically is very good with.
Yeah, okay, but I put it mainly because I saw there are a couple of creatures that do have this mana fixing kind of ability on the unmorph side, or on the raid enter the battlefield. I think that this is something that appears in the set.
Yeah.
And then there are those morphs that don't have a mana cost to morph them, but you reveal a card of a particular color to do it. And again, all of those will be small, because no big creature will unmorph by showing cards. You need to pay at least 5 mana. But like this one, for example, it's a 2/2, and you can upgrade it into a 2/1 flyer, and you gain 2 life by showing a white card, which almost reassuredly will be Feat of Resistance.
Just with these ones, I think the important one to kind of understand is the blue one, which is I think it's, I can't remember the name of it. I have it here.
Is it like an 05 that you can look at?
Yeah, I think it's 06 actually. It's very large. Yeah, it's an 06. It's Dragon Eye Savants, and it costs 2 mana. So a lot of times what you do with that is you kind of it's like stealing mana from your opponent. So if you have that morph down and they have, let's say, something that becomes a 4/4 or 4/5 or something like that, and then they spend that entire turn, and all you do is flip, reveal a blue card, and it flips up. It's such a huge tempo swing in those cases that often, as I said, there's less card advantage, but there's anytime you can get kind of turn advantage or mana advantage in the early game can really, really put you ahead, because you get to deploy more to the board.
I was already max punished today, because I said I played one draft and I played with the Jeskai deck, and my opponent played a morph and they're top down, and I'm like, yeah, I had this thing that for blue, red, and then colorless, you can deal 2 to something and tap something down.
Yeah.
And I I kill your morph and I tap the other thing, and then they just showed me something blue in their hand, and my 2 damage just went on an 06.
Also, just another thing, actually, just almost as an aside, the flying is like a lot better again in the set because morphs make up so much of the creature combat. So in many cases, and with Outlast being generally on non-flying creatures, you have to break through sometimes, and so flying is a little bit more important than most sets.
Okay, we have some. We have also the morph payoffs, and here for the payoffs, the secret plants, which now has a different art, so don't get used to this one. Face down creatures you control get +0/+1. Whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, draw a card. Which it must be amazing, especially with those when you just have to show a card to flip something and you draw a card out of it. That sounds. I think that it will be a sweet build around, and I definitely plan to play it.
Yeah, it's good. What I would say is I think Temur is actually one of the weaker colors. Weirdly, I don't think it's like super weak. It's but often it becomes a little bit clunky, and so that's one thing against it. I'm not saying you can't play Simic cards in general. You can. It's just that.
Oh, you can play them also in Sultai, no?
That's true. Sultai is very good in this set, I think.
But then maybe Secret Plants and Delve are not exactly on the same level. And I guess that Trail of Mystery, that's if I see it and so basically that says whenever you play a morph, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand. So you can play 5 colors then quite easily, or 3 colors, but you splash some morphs that are off color, and you get the missing basics through the Trail of Mystery.
I think this card is busted because I think the first ability is very good for all the reasons you just stated, but the second ability kind of just means that your opponent is forced to always kind of it's so hard for them to block with their morphs or block your morphs.
Especially when you have those that can flip for showing a card of a given color, and then all of a sudden instead of a 2/1 they become a 4/3. And they each your thing quite easily.
I think this card's very good, but I think it's pretty obvious.
I'm pretty sure like opening hand win rate is going to be quite high, because if you can dump it on turn 2, turn 3 morph, get a land, because I think that this is also a format that it looks like not missing land drops is going to be quite essential, at least till turn 6.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely true. Also, I think you should be playing more land in your decks in general in this format because of the 3-color nature. Like 3 colors, generally, the color distribution you require without, let's say you don't have that much kind of like 2-color or 3-color fixing in your land base. You actually do need that extra land to get certain like balances out, right? And it kind of depends on how you drafted your deck. But
so
like
18lands.com.
Yeah, I always like wondered about that because like it's so funny for me. I very rarely pay 17. I love sub 17 land decks. Like I often like one of my strategies in formats is to kind of like find what is the best like sub like sub 17, like 16 or 15, or in some cases all the way down to kind of like I used to love the 12 to 13 land decks that you could play in Kaladesh. And then on the other hand, it's like the decks that you play 18 and sometimes even 19. I think 19 is pretty rare, but like there are decks that play that. Because I think most people kind of like default very quickly. It's like, what are my 23s? What's my 17? And I actually think most of you can get a lot of advantage when you don't have to play an extra land in your deck. And I think also, if you're like being more consistent with your mana, that also is like a huge advantage. So knowing when that's right is actually really, really important.
Well, I mean, I'm so dedicated to 17 lands that in my first draft, I obviously played 17 lands. But I did have 3 of the 1 mana +1/+0 draw a card spells. So I thought I can cut a land for 3 1 mana cyclers, basically.
Fair enough.
And then another payoff I put was just morph creatures themselves when they have not ETB really, but flip TB flip flip triggers or something. So this one is a 4-mana 3/1 flyer, which is absolutely atrocious rate for modern times, and I think that even for then. But it is morph of 2 and a blue, and when you flip it as a morph cost, target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn. So you can basically get value out of this particular one.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually the base rate of the card is actually pretty good for, not like amazing for the time, but like fine.
Wow.
Also, there's not that many 1 damage effects, so that
is
helps.
true. X1 hate is almost like there's one red spell, I think, is there?
Right. So yeah, so in that way, as I said before, flying is very good. So I do remember this card being pretty reasonable, like from a stat perspective. That being said, I do think that like there is a lot of value to be gotten, and I talked about earlier, you don't get as much card advantage. This is how you get your card advantage in this set. You do have things that have flip triggers, and if you can get a card out of your opponent with it, that's a huge advantage.
Okay, do we have anything on morphs? No, I think that's the end of my morph slides. Do you have anything else to, like, some hidden knowledge, secrets?
So I don't think there's too much hidden knowledge, except that you should be very, very aware of all the morphs at common. So, look at the spoiler, like understand what are the morphs at common, because I remember back then knowing contextually, like how, like people give big tells about what the cards are face down, much bigger than you think they would. So it helps a lot to know what's available to people. Like obviously, if there's Simic, you're going to have a wider range, and it's often harder to figure out. But if there are the other colors and they have morphs, you generally are able to figure out kind of what they have, or at least what potentially it could have, and that can work in your favor and against you too. You can actually represent ones that are like that your mana represents if you kind of play it a certain way. So understand there is a bit of a mind game thing. You can
definitely do some manual tapping to pretend that you have some the bounce creature. Actually, there's only 17 morphs at common, and 9 at uncommon. So
yeah,
memorizing those is not like rocket science, really.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely true. Also, this is something I think, but we'll see if people agree with this. I generally don't think it's worth playing off-color morphs that you have no chance of unmorphing. So, like at one point, the first time that morph came in like Onslaught block, that was kind of true. Sometimes the creatures are so bad that just playing.
Oh god, I played so often, just off-color morphs because hey, 3-mana 2/2 is better than like 50% of common creatures.
Right. That's not as true here.
No,
so,
that's not.
Right. So don't, like, obviously, desperate times will like necessitate some things, but in general, it like the rate for a 2/2 for 3 is not good enough to play off color. Obviously, there's some kind of like bluffing equity that might be worth it. So who knows? But in general, I don't think it's worth it.
Oh, by the way, this is like, okay, maybe I'll ask that question later. So let's move to the second mechanic, prowess. It's in the raw green colors. As we all know, that's how you describe the 3-color combination of blue, red, and white. That's why it's called Jeskai Elder, I guess. So there are 10 creatures that have prowess. 5 in blue, 2 in white, 3 in red. And I also calculated there's like 59 potential enablers, but only 17 of them are at lower rarity and below 3 mana, which I think is, if you want to go like combo kind of prowess, you would need more of those. So my conclusion for that was that prowess is more like extra value here and there. And it's not going to be like combo prowess like you sometimes had in, I don't know, M21, I think it was, or M20, when you had like those turns when you play like 1 mana cantrip, 1 mana cantrip, 1 mana cantrip, trumpet blast, dead. No, that kind of thing will not happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The one thing that I think that's interesting about prowess is that I think the prowess creatures that are like low mana or like like 1 and 2 and sometimes 3 are very, very good in this environment because the threat of it's hard to block with a morph when someone attacks with a prowess creature, or and vice versa, like block with one. I actually think the bigger ones are generally bad deals. There's a few like 4 and 5 mana ones that are like you just don't get the advantage, and on top of it all, like a lot of times if you're playing a prowess deck, you've already kind of used your enablers.
Yeah, I mean, I did play the 4/2 with hexproof, and I think hexproof is a nice thing to have on a creature. But it felt clunky that it had 2 toughness and no evasion. And
Yeah.
still, I think it's so early in the format that you can win with anything. But I think that what like without playing Khans of Tarkir, I know how annoying is Monastery Swiftspear if you have a 2/2 on board and they attack into it. It's like you're never blocking it. It's just not going to happen. You can just straight face bluff it, and no one is going to block that Monastery Swiftspear with a 2/2, especially if that 2/2 can convert into like a 5/4 later in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where like one of the cards I think that plays much better than you'd expect is the I think it's called Seeker of the Way. You probably
that's the 2/2. Do I have it in the next slide?
Maybe. Let me have a look.
Oh no, I don't have it. But I know it's basically it's a 1 and a white for a 2/2. It has prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gains also lifelink. So whenever you cast, it's going to be a 3/3 lifelinker when you cast a spell.
Yeah, and I think it kind of like does double duty here, where like in a world where you're kind of like trying to bluff attacks a lot, the times that you actually get the lifelink like make it really, really hard to. I mean, obviously to race, but it's actually hard to block too. So it does kind of everything you need a 2-drop to do in this format, where it pulls you ahead in because the format's aggressive, and it's hard to block. So all those things together means that it actually like often a Seeker of the Way in turn 2, like I've seen many games get run away with that card.
Oh yeah, no, I can totally imagine that, and especially that you can even have this as a turn 3 play when you leave up 1 mana for the whatever it is, Dauntless Strike, the +1/+0 and draw a card, and you got like a 4/3 lifelinker all of a sudden. That doesn't cost you a card because you get replacement from the +1/+0 trick. Sure. And yeah, I see in the chat that people just say that 1/2 for 2 looks just bad. I think that the fact that it's an attack trigger in a set where you want to play 18 lands, where if you play 18 lands, looting becomes much better. I think that this card looks pretty good actually.
Yeah,
it's a 2-drop as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this card is. I've always found this card to be a little underwhelming, because, like, I just don't think it hits hard enough, and it's no good on defense. Like, its power is no good in defense because you only get the loot if it does damage to a player. So you have this weird thing is like if you want to loot, you have to kind of use up mana, and so you kind of like put yourself behind on board a little bit to get that effect. So I think it plays out much worse than it potentially could be. I'm not as like hot on this card. I do think that prowess, like what was it, the Monastery Swiftspear. One of the things that's really, really good about it also is raid. We'll see that later. Like anything that you can drop early that is hard to block, like interact with raid positively, like very, very well. And so I think that is another kind of vector to think about here. And I think that's like that's the problem with Jeskai Elder. It's not in a red color.
Maybe if it was like a red card, it would have been better, and it had, instead of looting, a rummage. So here I put some enablers, and I thought they're like Defiant Strike is probably important because it's like a non-creature spell that is super cheap and is offensive, which Prowess, I guess, wants to be, and it draws a card, which gives you more spells, hopefully. I don't know if that card was good in that format, or was it?
Yeah, it's good in like insofar as like it's a Prowess enabler. One other thing that you can look at it also fills the graveyard, so it does help a little bit.
So basically, that's what I assumed, that if you're playing a Prowess deck, you want to play maybe like one Treasure Cruise in it,
right?
And then Defiant Strikes will allow you to do dig for it and also to give fuel for it, and then cast it early, and then you might have that moment when you are starting to run out of steam and you refill with Treasure Cruise and then move on. I played with my Jeskai deck, and for example, playing a lot of Defiant Strikes early to just make trades efficient allowed me to cast Treasure Cruises, which allowed me to cast late game. There's this card, 5 mana, like Master of the Way.
Oh yeah, it's the one that
draw a card and deal damage equal to the number of cards in your hand to a target. And I like finished a couple of games through that. I just played the Treasure Cruise, drew 3 cards, played this thing, pinged opponent for 5 in the face. Happy times.
And that's actually true for Tormenting Voice on the right hand side here. Obviously, very good with Treasure Cruise as well as being an enabler. You know, like they've made these kind of effects so good nowadays, so it's like easier to like now they're instant and give extra stuff like when you like filtering cards. But this is essentially the original one. I think there might have been.
I know when I restarted playing Magic. I know that I've been introduced to this as the thing, and it was in some kind of dredge deck or whatever, and then they printed the Thrill of Possibility, and it was like Thrill of Possibility was the instant speed Tormenting Voice.
Yes.
While now this is just that's a different version of Thrill of Possibility, which quickly like overtook it. So yeah. I do remember that art. Now I know that this must be Sarkhan, but
yes.
Then I just was random guy with a headache. Me after 12 years of not playing. But I'm guessing this would be important. But I also put the Warden of the Eye, the Jeskai 3/3 creature for 5 mana, and when it ETBs, you can return a non-creature, non-land card from your graveyard to your hand. And I think that, this is like a good way of rebuying your key things. Maybe, you play that one Treasure Cruise, but later in the game, you already have a graveyard again and enough mana. You can rebuy it, recast it, or you can get the key removal, cast it, kill something, open up attacks because you already cast another spell or something.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I wouldn't it's one of those things that I think it plays a little worse than sometimes you'd hoped, because it's kind of like a little bit like 3 colors. The stats aren't amazing.
Yeah, you can't play it on curve very well either.
Yeah. It doesn't generally when you play it. It actually is dwarfed by most of the creatures at the time. So if you think about like creatures being invalidated at different points in the game, you have to devalue the fact that it is a 2-for-1, right? Because if the 3/3 does not make an impact on the game, obviously it makes some impact, but because it doesn't, let's say it can't trade easily.
Yeah, instead of 2-for-1, it becomes like a 1.5-for-1 because the 3/3 is just like an extra body, and at that stage it might be more valuable as a go wide kind of part rather than the actual significant. Because the 6/7 Loxodon will just laugh at it.
Yeah, and also there are quite a few expensive sorceries and instants in this set in the higher rarities that are actually worth rebuying. So there's I think there's the one that makes everyone double strike and fly.
Yeah, the crane, crane style
Flying Tank
mastery.
Trick.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, Flying Crane.
when you have that card,
I had it in my first. I had it in my first draft, and I did play Warden of the Eye with that. And I drew Warden of the Eye in almost every game, but I drew the Crane never. So I theoretically understand that the Crane trick is pretty good.
Yes.
Because I understand how Magic works, and I know that giving your team flying and double strike ends the game quite efficiently.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously that's true, but sometimes you need to.
It would have been lovely to see it in action at least once, but no. So the payoffs, I picked up the non-prowess payoffs. Obviously, the prowess creatures are payoffs on its own. I have the Sage of the Inward Eye. That's a 3/4 flyer for 2 and Jeskai mana. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. I think that looks really, really busted.
Yeah, this one's very good for all the reasons that lifelink.
I mean, yeah, it's like a 3/4 flyer for 5 mana. That's probably already good in this set.
Yeah, like it's just a good rate for the set, which is, I think, like in some ways it's not even a payoff because of the rate, its base rate is so good. But
the lifelink will not hurt. I'm pretty sure.
For sure.
Goblin Slide, that looks like a very weird card to me, but I think it like gives you a different I don't know, angle of attacking your opponent. You get this Goblin Slide, and whenever you cast the spell, you can pay 1 mana and make a 1/1 red Goblin token with haste.
Yeah, this card's a weird one. I think this is an LSV pet card as well. I don't know. I actually don't know the context of why it is a pet card, but he's often
because he's on it.
Yes, perhaps. But what I would say is one of the interesting things and tough things in the prowess decks is the mix of creatures and spells. Often means that you are kind of threat light in many cases, and so having a card that kind of like allows you to build up some sort of threat so you can go wide can be useful. I wouldn't say that it's the most efficient way of doing it, but it's interesting to think about.
I guess that if you play that, you also play that 3 mana spell that makes 3 goblins, and then you play the +2/+1 thing.
Yeah, I mean,
is that?
Yeah, I think you're thinking the down the right path, because what you need, thinking about your creature density is actually pretty important in prowess decks, because you got often like, if they have a removal spell and you've kind of like bet everything about this card actually living, so your prowess cards are good, it can be tough. So just be aware of it when you're building your deck.
Yeah, and then Jeskai Ascendancy, I put it because I guess that's a card that you want to be playing in your Jeskai deck. Otherwise, no. But I mean, I looked at the Ascendancies, and this one looked like one of the better ones. Like some of them looked like I probably don't want to play them. This one looks like, yeah.
So funnily enough,
it gives everything prowess basically.
I don't think this card is very good. I do think there are other ascendancies that are better. Probably like Abzan
looked busted. Yeah, that gave
Abzan is busted.
Counters. Yeah.
I think Mardu Ascendancy is actually not bad as well. And then the other two,
Timur looked rubbish-ish.
Yes.
And then
yeah, I mean, look, Jeskai Ascendancy, if you get it on the table, it's going to be reasonable. Like, but you already are kind of getting a lot of advantage with, like, it doesn't help you do something you're like not doing, and I think that's the key to it. Obviously, the looting is good, but it's I don't know if it's like it's particularly necessary for the Jeskai decks.
I don't think it's necessary. I think it's a card that is going to just make sure that you win when you're in parity. It won't bring you back from behind.
Yeah, but I think that's the problem.
I don't think that it's so easy to be so deeply behind in this format.
Yeah, that's generally true. So maybe I'm a little harsh on it.
Or I'm just well, we're gonna see everything of those takes. We're gonna see how the data evaluates, and you know that if data says something, it's true, and that's it. There's no discussion anymore. Okay, Delve. It's a Zygoth. Okay, I'm gonna skip it because once it's acceptable. But let's move to the traditional nomenclature. It's Sultai mechanic. There are 11 spells with Delve, and probably like 9 of those saw constructed play, I guess.
Yeah. This is
because Prowess. That was the first time that Prowess was made in Khans, right?
yeah, I think so.
Because Delve existed before, or
No, Delve was also new.
Okay.
Sorry, it existed in Future Sight, so it was
because there was the angler thing. Where's that one from?
no, that's from a future set. Like it's from the next set.
Okay.
Right, like, but interestingly, Delve was previewed in Future Sight when they did all the one-offs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so in theory you'd seen it before, but this is the first time it kind of appears as a wedge mechanic or a full set mechanic. It actually doesn't play that great because it's pretty hard to get cards into your graveyard, especially in a creature focused set. There's obviously some cards that help you enable it. I think there's very little.
And I think I missed. I think I missed the most important card that will enable it.
Which one is that?
The 3 mana. Opponent discards 2 cards, and you mill yourself for 2.
Yes. That's Rakshasa's.
Rakshasa something.
Yeah.
So I listened later, and then Cortical said that that's probably the card you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, a reason is card advantages.
Rakshasa's secret. It's
yes. Yeah, I mean, it's a mind rot that mills 2, so that's kind of 3 cards.
So basically puts 3 cards in your graveyard. Yeah, exactly. But that's why I put Taigam Scheming. That card looks pretty mad to me, honestly, and I would probably don't want to play it unless I'm like super powerful Delve kind of payoffs.
Yeah, so here's the problem with Delve, like as a limited mechanic, is it's parasitic to itself. You have too many Delve cards. Like usually with keywords, if you have a high density, it's better because like your payoffs and your enablers kind of like get better as more happen. That's not necessarily true with Delve. Obviously, they've kind of done some of the things, and obviously, if you have a lot of enablers, it allows you to play your Delve spells with higher frequency. The problem is that when you play a Delve spell, it makes the next Delve spell much harder to play. So that's the reason why.
Like when I tried to organize it in my head, I thought it's basically like Escape.
Yeah, it is like Escape, except I think
Escape has a face value cast that you can easily cast, and this one has to be discounted because I'm not paying like 9 mana for a 3/3 flyer or something.
Yeah, so that's the problem. The fail case is pretty high. That being said, the payoffs can be amazing. Obviously, Treasure Cruise is the one that people know, and I think Sultai, the color combination is actually very good, which is I think maybe they realized that Delve was a little tough as a key mechanic, and so the average power level of the cards is a bit higher. But overall, I think Delve is not necessarily kind of like a deck you make.
By the way, this card is now so much more elegant. It only says Surveil 5. That's it.
Yes.
and end of the text box. I put also the Sultai Soothsayer. So when it enters the battlefield, it's a 5 mana 2/5. 2/5 kills morph, so that's good. Enters the battlefield, you look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So sort of like better impulse for this set, I would say.
Yeah. It's pretty good. Card advantage obviously sized pretty well for the format. 3 color obviously means it's a little bit hard to consistently get you like on turn 5, but overall I think that card is like generally a workhorse in this format.
Yeah, and then Bitter Revelation, I just put it because it puts 3 cardboards in your graveyard. That's like 4 mana. Look at top 4 cards, put them put 2 of them in your hand and the rest in your graveyard, and you lose 2 life. I don't think that it's like a good card. I just put it because it puts a large amount of cardboard into graveyard. There is also like 3 mana, look for a land and put everything else into graveyard. You look at top 5 cards or something.
Yeah, so I think Bitter Revelation is not really playable just for all the reasons. Like, it's just kind of not good at doing what it's doing, and being a sorcery also means that you can't kind of keep up removal spells. But I do think the other one you talked about, the land one, is actually a little bit better. Overall, they do have one of the reasons you end up in Sultai is the general card quality is higher, because I think you get some of the better morph creatures. You get the black removal.
No, you got the most morph creatures because you got substantially more morph creatures in Simic colors. So you're gonna get sort of You probably got Hooting Mandrills is probably a good card for the Delve in general.
Yeah, I think so. I think Hooting Mandrills is like very solid because the fail case is actually not that bad. Like, you only need 2 cards and then it becomes kind of like slightly ahead of rate for this set. Like a 4/4/4.
Yeah, and Trample is nice and whatever.
Yeah. So overall, it's pretty good. But I think you end up with this color combination a lot. But I would be careful about having too many Delve spells in your deck.
And then I thought, like, what would be payoffs for Delve? And that one payoff is that if you're self-milling, you might as well return creatures from your graveyard to your hand and use them as a sort of like selection for the draw. So that maybe the dutiful return thing is okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like pretty inefficient. Like 4 mana, like do nothing to the board.
But everything is more expensive by 1 mana in this play set. Like, Deadweight costs 2 already. So
I mean, I agree, except that, like, I think, you know, we're talking about a set that's like pretty aggressive. So 4 mana do nothing is actually like pretty rough. So I think already a double Raise Dead would be disfavored. I think this particular one is much more disfavored. Same as the Bitter Revelation. Like, you know, if you're getting hit by raid creatures and prowess creatures, you really don't have a lot of time.
Then I thought, like Bloodsoaked Champion, that's again something that you might want to put in your graveyard because you can get it out of it.
Yeah, I mean,
all those like surveil spells that they might help with the other thing. And I put the Necropolis Fiend because that looks like if you can get that thing on board, that can win the games quite well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big flyer, reasonable payoff. I will say that the killing the creature ability is actually not as good as it reads very well, but you generally only get to kill 1 creature with this. I remember like I had some friends and I've overvalued this card a little bit. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It's a reasonable payoff, but it's not like, oh, I get to control the board completely, because you've already
dealt 5 probably to cast it.
Yeah, and so.
But if you did, you got like what? Wow, it's still 5 mana. My God, this thing is so expensive. I mean, 5 mana for a 4/5 flyer is probably good in this set.
Yeah, it's certainly good enough.
And then maybe later in the game, if you can kill a 2/2 with it, that's fine. But probably you're better off just attacking then.
That's the thing. It's because of the tap ability. It's like you don't really want to block with this thing. So, 4/5 flyer is probably just better.
Yeah, probably just like play Yorion, attack with Yorion. Don't care about any kind of blink. Just 4/5 flyer sometimes good. Right. So, anything else that you have like in terms of Sultai and?
No, I mean, I think I've said most of the stuff. Just be aware that you don't want to overdo Delve.
So how many Delve spells you want to play in a deck? Like 3, maybe?
3 or 4. I mean, and I generally feel that.
I guess some of them you can play more because there's like the 5 mana instant speed removal, and this one I guess you can. Later in the game, you can easily cast it on its cost, and it's not a tragedy. if you want to save
yeah.
cards in your graveyard.
I think that it's the weird thing is the time sensitivity of the card. The lower the time sensitivity of the card, the better the delve card is for you. So the reason why Treasure Cruise and Murderous Cut are kind of fine is that you don't have to fire it off on curve. But then when you have like curve creatures, like actually the setup and the payoff kind of has to happen kind of in rapid succession. Otherwise, you're actually not like if you're skipping turns because you haven't like got enough cards in your graveyard to play your card, then like you're really not getting the advantage of it being cheaper because you wasted mana. And that's actually one of the biggest challenges of Delve in general on creatures is that the variance on what turn you can play it is so high that often you are missing turns to get there.
So that's why I like the Hooting Mandrills, because what I can see is that like turn 5 I can play the opponent discards 2 cards, I mill 2, and then I play for 2 mana the Hooting Mandrills, and that's like a perfect care about, no? And you
That's
can
right.
probably easily arrange that kind of thing happening. While I'm not going to do the same and cast Treasure Cruise, but
Correct.
Treasure Cruise I don't care. But I can keep up, for example, the removal. I pay the Rakshasa secret, and I keep up the removal. If I have to cast it, I am capable of. If I don't, I can save maybe some cards in my graveyard for other things that I have to remove to be able to cast them.
And also 5 mana for like an instant removal spell, like that Failcase is not so bad either.
Exactly.
So I think that's how you have to think about it. Like,
so I'm thinking like if I have the it's called Murderous Cut removal or something like that.
Murderous Cut.
Yeah. That I can just remove them from my delve limits. I give myself 3 delve cards, but these ones I can probably have unlimited amounts because I can easily cast them for 5 mana as a kill spell.
Yeah, for sure.
While Hooting Mandrills, I want to at least trim 2-3 mana out of it, if not 4.
Yes, right. I think if you can't consistently get 2 out of it, you probably shouldn't put it in your deck. But if you like reasonably can do that without like trying too hard, I think that's fine.
All right. So let's move to Raid, and that's a Mardu mechanic. 5 red cards, 3 white cards, 3 black cards, and I didn't like give any payoffs because there's no payoffs for Raid. There's cards with Raid, and that's it. But there's no like, oh, if you Raid, you get an additional bonus, like you get with Prowess in some cases here. A payoff is basically being an aggressive deck, and probably this is the most aggressive deck in the format.
Yeah, so one thing that's important to note is like Raid generally kind of lines up with the warrior decks that you said before. Nearly most of the most aggressive Raid cards are warriors too. So the 2 kind of warrior lords, Chief of the Scale and Chief of the Edge, that pump up toughness and power.
These are great. These are 2 mana. One is a 3/2 that gives +1/+0, and the other one is a 2/3 that gives +0/+1. The 2/3 looks amazing to me because obviously it blocks morphs.
Yes, I mean I think they're both quite good. This is on rate like
efficient. No. Obviously, like 2 mana 3/2 is still good, but I think that the 2 mana 2/3 is just particularly good in this set.
Yeah, no. I think this kind of to reiterate. Raid has the most good 2-drops. Mardu has the most good 2-drops in a set where 2-drops are really, really valuable. So I think that's kind of the way you should be thinking about it. Like this can take advantage of decks that are kind of relying on morphs to make up for the card advantage. Often Raid, like also you could kind of fake Raid sometimes where you attack and it looks like you're throwing away the creature so you can activate Raid, but then you have a trick. So so you have that like little bit of kind of like tension there.
Cunning. You can use the good old cunning. I think that unfortunately on Arena, this like next level things just don't work.
Yes, that's true. And I wonder if I'm overvaluing some of those stuff, but like more formats generally have a lot of let's call cunning things, and maybe it just doesn't play out that way. I haven't played this set on Arena yet.
This is like my most frustrating moments in Magic are when I'm making this kind of cunning bluff attack when I'm attacking with a 2/2 into their 3/3 because they are tapped out. And who sane would block a 2/2 when I'm with open mana attacking into a 3/3? Turns out in Arena it will happen. And
I mean, yeah, and like obviously you can kind of like change your stops and stuff like that, so it doesn't like give it away as well. But one of the reasons Mardu is good is I think that it's generally focused around black-white more than anything else. So you're definitely
I actually am looking right now. There's like 29 warriors in Khans, and 4 are in white. No, 5 in white, 7 in black, only 2 in red, and actually 4 in green. So there is actually more Abzan warriors than Mardu warriors. And then obviously there are the 2 uncommons that are in white black, and there is a couple of Mardu cards, couple of Abzan cards that also have, and also like every single team or multicolor card is a warrior for some reason, and that has nothing to do with black or white. So I don't get where is the teamwork connection there, but
that is weird.
every single, like, look, Avalanche Tusker, Bear's Companion, Savage Knuckleblade, Snowhorn Rider, Surak Dragonclaw, all of them are warriors.
I guess like occasionally a 5-color deck comes together, so maybe you want that to be.
Maybe that's like the secret payoff for your 5-color teamer warriors.
What I will say is, I think the best limited card in the set, aggressive one, is Raid. It's the what is it? The Wingmate Rock. I think that card is
that's the mythic one. That's the
the mythic one.
3/4 flyer, and when you raid it, it makes another 3/4 flyer.
Yeah, it's just so much like stats for what it is, and so I think in general, I mean, it's obviously a no pass card, so you like some of the best cards line up well with Raid specifically. So in general, your tricks are better with Raid, your removal's better with Raid. So like you're kind of taking advantage of all the stuff.
Yeah, like Feat of Resistance again is just probably insane when you're attacking and luring the blocks and you have untapped mana and the opponent doesn't. That's always going to work.
Yeah. So I mean, I think Raid is a good place to be, but it can sometimes be overdrafted, and there is like curve considerations that are greater than.
How important are 2 drops then, if you're raiding?
Extremely. In fact, 1 drops are sometimes important.
Because that was the card I wanted to leave the question for the raid part. There is this 1 mana 1/1 that for 4 mana can get +2/+0 and trample or something. Is that a playable thing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, good. Because I was thinking like how so. The 1 mana Death Toucher, that must be pretty important, I guess.
There's kind of 2 of them. There's the 1 mana white Death Toucher that you play black that Death Touch. So generally they just don't block because they don't want to trade kind of make that mana trade. There's also the black morph one, that Ruthless Ripper, that actually
I had the pleasure of bumping into it today. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is it's actually good as a morph and good as a 1-drop in raid decks if you want to set.
Yeah, because you got like a couple of the 2 mana raid creatures that you might want to be able to activate one way or another.
Yeah, I mean the 2/1 raid creature that makes them discard a card. I think that's actually a premium card in this deck specifically because 1, it's aggressive, and 2, it's kind of card advantage while still trading with morphs. Overall, card's very good. That's the Mardu Skull Hunter. I think that card.
Yeah, that's and it's also a warrior.
Yeah. So overall, like also Mardu Heart Piercer. So that's the red and 2/3. When it comes to play, do 2 damage or something. Also very good.
Oh, the 2/4 flame tongue, the 2/3 flame tongue cup. Yeah, that card is it's nice when you attack with like a. I had that in my deck, and I attack with something. If they don't block, I just kill the morph. If they block, I play Feat of Resistance, and I don't care.
Yeah, again, this set favors like the combat, the attacker, so much that sorry, and Raid is the deck that's kind of positioned that like well in that way. I don't think it's always the best colors, but I do think that in general, it's very, very like I think it's a good place to be.
Yeah, and Marduk Horde Chief, a great card in general.
Yes.
Looks amazing. It's a 2/3, which is probably the best stat line you can have in this set. I mean, but it's the most appropriate stat line for the set. Probably best stat line is like 12/12 or something. But 2/3 is just like such an appropriate stat line for the creatures. It doesn't die from morphs and making the 1/1 great. There was one like that in Ikoria, and it was also great. And people slept on it for like forever. So I'm sure that they're gonna still sleep on this one. And because the set has lower power in general, this must be even better than the Ikoria one was.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I think the time and place is so different. This the 1/1 is really, really good at kind of like helping you race in interesting ways, because obviously a 1/1 is like it's very small and there's not that many 1 toughness creatures. So
Yeah, but
like,
you also have this. So I took it that I would have never played it in modern sets. The sorcery +2/+1 and warriors get lifelink on top of everything. That probably is a playable card in some decks.
yes. Oh no, I think so in general, because you're racing a lot of times.
And yeah, it doesn't matter that it's not an instant speed. You play it. The opponent knows exactly what's going on. It's still good enough. And the fact that the 1/1 is also a warrior, it's just not like a human token. I'm guessing that this is a good bonus, and there are probably other ways of making small warriors or some type.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to Ferocious. And basically Ferocious is a teamer mechanic. There is 5 green cards, 3 red cards, 3 blue cards. And it does something when you control a creature with power 4 or greater. And I picked this Heir of the Wilds. It's another Death Toucher. It's weird because it's a teamer card, technically, because it has the Ferocious mechanic. And for some reason, it has Death Touch, which looks to me like so much not on the color pie of this one. I would expect, a green card can have Death Touch, of course, and many of them do. But I would say it has to be linked to black in some way and not like to teamer. Okay.
Yeah, it is a weird Ferocious card. What I will say is, as a mechanic, Ferocious it's bad in the way, like, obviously this card's fine and a lot of the teamer cards are fine. Problem with Ferocious is, almost by definition, it's something that only turns on when you're kind of like something already is going well for you. If you have a 4-power creature that, like, obviously not every 4-power creature is amazing, but like in general, to get there, like, you're already doing quite well. So like in the case of like Beard's Companion, it's a 4/4. So like a 4/4, do you need to have that much more bonus beyond having the 4/4? No, I mean you obviously it's good that you have something to trigger off it, but like the fail case is actually pretty high, so your Ferocious just doesn't work if you don't have that board presence, and it's a board presence of a reasonable creature. Now, so Alpine Grizzly is actually not that great because it kind of even though it trades with most morphs, it trades with most morphs. So it's like it's very hard for it to be better than that. And in general, I think things like Dragon Grip are like, again, it's a Ferocious card that actually triggers helps with Ferocious. It's almost like
so that's why that's exactly the reason why I put it here, because it looks to me like this kind of my morph can now trigger Ferocious, and then if I have the Ferocious, I can play it as an instant combat trick, which is also good.
Yeah, it's weird. I've never had this card play out that well, because I think 3 mana tricks are like better do more than what this does.
But I thought maybe because you're gonna keep mana up for the morphs, so I thought that maybe it's not that suspicious that you keep up 3 mana up. Like people will think that you're going to keep that mana for unmorphing something, and you can actually surprise them with this Dragon Grip or something.
Yeah, I mean,
I think-
when you say it that way, I don't disagree. I just have very little recall of this card being particularly.
Yeah,
good.
no, I put it strictly because it was one of the few things that can actually enable ferocious without being a creature and having ferocious itself. I see that it's an interesting thing when something is both an enabler and a potential payoff.
Yeah,
Even though that payoff looks like quite medium, but it's much better to have an instant speed aura than to have a sorcery speed aura.
yeah, and obviously there's like First Strike is actually quite a powerful ability overall, because it just like it's very good on attacking and defense. So I think that's
nowadays normally this kind of aura gives only First Strike when it ETBs, and then it doesn't keep the First Strike. But this one is First Strike forever.
Yeah. I mean, I may be again too harsh on this. I just don't recall it being significant calculation back then.
Then I put like just generally Bear's Companion is a weird one because it's technically not a 4/4 creature, but it makes a 4/4 token. And I picked Alpine Grizzly because that's like the cheapest way of getting a 4 power. And I did hear that it actually is good with the Savage Punch. It's not a Savage Smash, although Savage Smash was based on that, I guess. Savage, that's a fight spell. When you're ferocious, it gives the creature +2/+2, and then it fights. Otherwise, you just 2 mana fight something.
Yeah.
So Alpine Grizzly, you play it on turn 3. On turn 4, you have it fight something, slam for 6, and if you can repeat that, then game is probably over.
Yeah, I mean, Savage Punch is a very, very good card. I mean, I think it's on the next slide. And overall,
in the payoffs,
in the payoff section. So in general, I think this card is like Savage Punch is very good. I think TV Ascendancy is kind of the problem with it is that like it doesn't help you in a way that you need helped. Like I don't know. I mean, obviously you cast it on turn 3, it's pretty good because the haste part matters more. It's not a great card from coming from behind. In general, you can't chain it very well because like creatures with power 4 or greater are expensive, so you only draw like 1 extra card a turn. So it's not like it doesn't have this kind of like cascading effect.
I know. I'm not like convinced that it's a great card. I just put it there because there are just so painfully few payoffs for ferocious. I like the Dragon Throne of Tarkir. That's not strictly a ferocious payoff. I just thought that once you're playing things with lots of power, this card might be actually quite good in breaking Stallmates because you just basically need to activate it once and the game is over, even if you have only a bunch of morphs. If you put it on like a 4 power creature and you make a +4/+4 overrun. I don't know if that card is actually any good, but it looks like this is, if it's a slow format, this card can actually end games quite efficiently.
Yeah, unfortunately I think it's like just too much mana. So it's like 4 to cast, 3 to equip, 2 to use. And then like so while obviously if you get to the end of that journey, it's going to be pretty good. Like again, you have to look at like what's the situation that allows you to get to that point, and it only works really in like big stalemates. Now there are some, so it's not nothing, but it's.
But you still like if you're playing against a raid deck that starts turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, you will never have time to do that. You're much better getting something to stabilize.
It's like 9 mana for an offensive card, right? 9 mana for an offensive card is pretty tough. Like 9 mana for a defensive card paid over turns maybe is worth it, but like you got to be in a position to be able to attack for it to be good, and I mean to be at its best. Yeah. I think that's the problem.
Still, again, this is just an example of something that could technically pay off the ferocious beat plan. But I guess that ferocious is not going to be even the plan for those decks.
Yeah,
It's just
and
something
yeah.
that happens by the way. It's not like, and I mean, we see that. Like, did they ever manage to make a Gruul deck in the last 3-4 years where Ferocious Mechanic was there? Because it's still there. There's the Power 4, whatever, in like every second set or so. And I never saw it being like predominant. It was like a couple of cards were good as individual cards, but I never saw it as, oh, that's a theme, and the theme is amazing, and I want to be playing it, and I'm looking for my 3-mana 4/2.
None of the cards that actually say Ferocious are particularly good. Savage Punch kind of being the exception. What I will say is Temur is full of good rates. There's quite a lot of good rate cards. So it's almost like the power of Ferocious is you have 4/4s for 3. Like, Savage Knuckleblade is like an example of that. But like as a mechanic, there's not a lot tying the room together. So in general, like what you'll see with Ferocious decks is it's not a lot of synergy, but there's a lot of efficiency. And
Wait.
so,
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering, like, wasn't Savage Knuckleblade like the super overhyped card when it was released in?
Yeah, for constructed, that's definitely true. I think for limited, it's still like obviously.
I mean, yeah, no, it's a free mana. It's a free mana 4/4, and limited is fine. No, but I heard like stories that this one was supposed to be like basically what Tarmogoyf later became, like that super cheap thread that is just going to be amazing, and it cost like $50 or something, and.
I mean, that like my friends in Wizards at the time, they thought that Temur was actually the best deck coming out of best constructed deck that's coming out of Khans. As it turns out, it was almost definitely Abzan being the best colors coming out of it because Siege Rhino is so good.
Turns out the 4/5 blocks a 4/4.
Yeah, and also the ETB abilities is too powerful. I mean, we'll get to Abzan next, but
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, but I think Temur is like really like as you said, it's weak payoffs and the setup cost is high. So as a strategy, it's not great. As a set of cards, not bad. Like,
but just basically play cards on rate, and they will be high rate cards, and then put good cards together, put some combat tricks and some savage punches, and you should be good.
Yeah, I mean, also as I was saying before, it has a lot of morph cards as well.
Because it does have 2 of the main morph colors.
Yeah, so things like Secret Plans, Trail of Mystery, those are kind of like more a Temur payoff than anything that's specifically Ferocious.
Oh, by the way, I mean, this is a card that sort of touches on the Ferocious, but it was mind-boggling for me what this card doing and why is it an uncommon. I'm talking about the Mardu Blazebringer, the 3-mana Ogre Warrior that is a 4/4, and when it attacks or blocks, sacrifice at the end of the combat. That looks atrocious.
So it's not great. Let's be very clear here. It's meant to be a bit of glue for this set. And when I say by glue is like it's kind of this kind of worse of it's kind of like a bad case card that fits in a lot of shells. One is 4/4, so if you need just something that's cheap and that is less likely to die to trigger your Ferocious, it's there. Also, if you attack with it, like people are not going to want to chump it because it's going to die anyway. So it's good for raid.
So basically, that's Lava Axe.
Yeah, if you think of it, and then sometimes it blocks something and it kills it. So it's like that's 4 damage. So it's sometimes it's like Lava Coil. But the combination of them all is actually a pretty bad card. But you can see them when they're building the limited sets. Like, oh, it checks off all these boxes for some of the color combinations. This card is good, or this card is like worth designing. And I don't blame them for that. But it ends up being kind of like a worst of all worlds situation.
Sorry, just helping someone in chat because they were lost. Which card? It's Mardu Blazebringer, a 3-mana 4/4, and whenever it attacks or blocks, you sacrifice it at the end of combat. It's a very strange card. I think that there was like one of the old set had the same kind of thing, but there was a 4/4 flyer or something.
Yeah. No.
Those cards do exist sometimes. Like, was it fog Elemental or something?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. We move to Abzan mechanics, and that's Outlast and +1/+1 counters in some way. And there are 9 Outlast cards, and they are mainly in white, 5 of them. 2 are in black and 3 are in green. And they are sort of, I wrote sort of slivers, because I think that they have some kind of sliver vibes. And very frequently, like if you see the Einok Bondkin, that's a 2-mana 2/1, Outlast 1 and a white. So you pay 1 and a white and you tap it. And you put a counter on the Einok Bondkin. And then it also has a line of text. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has first strike. And what is important, Outlast, you can only play it as a sorcery. So you won't be able to like leave mana up and end of turn put counters on your Outlast creatures. You have to basically skip the block with them if you want to, or skip an attack with them if you want to be using the Outlast. So probably if I imagine it right, what if you're playing like an Abzan deck with lots of Outlast, you're going to play a 3-mana creature, use 1 mana to outlast something. Next turn, you outlast the thing that you played the turn before, but you keep the other one up, and then it's sort of like that. That's how it sort of works.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the flexibility is nearly all these creatures, not exclusively, but like nearly all of them are reasonable rate-wise. So you have a 2-mana 2/1 creature here. Obviously, not the best thing, but if you need to attack,
I think you make it a 3/2 first striker, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, like, I think the base rate for all these creatures are generally pretty good. And so, basically, once you've gotten past that hurdle, fail case is pretty good, because you only outlast when you feel that you either have time to, or you feel that like your consequent turns are going to be kind of much better if you start outlasting. So overall, it lends a bit of inevitability to a color combination that often has trouble breaking through.
Mm-hmm.
Also, some of the best tricks, as you're showing here, Feat of Resistance, and I mean, Dragonscale Boon really kind of like are tied to many of the payoffs of Outlast. The Bondkin obviously gives first strike. There's one that gives Death Touch, Lifelink, Flying.
Yeah, I mean, actually, there is a lifelink, flying, first strike. There is one that makes 1/1s when you outlast, but only when you activate itself. There is a couple of vanilla ones that don't do anything. The Death Touch, Reach, and Trample. So you got like, barring Double Strike, that would have been probably too much. Barring Double Strike, you have all the important abilities.
One of the important things is that, like, because like the inevitability is really, really important, because like as you get a lot of high toughness creatures, which is very common, you get stalemates, and this allows you to eventually win. If you have a look at like Dragonscale Boon specifically, that allows you to kind of outlast as well as block, which is actually something like a lot of times you hide the fact that
okay, because it untaps, so you basically
taps it. But yeah, I think this is a good mechanic and a very powerful mechanic in what I consider quite a good color combination. Good tricks. It has access to removal. The creatures are well statted and have low opportunity costs.
So Dragonscale Boon is actually a playable card, because currently it probably is a bit too expensive for the.
I actually don't think it's amazing, but it is playable. Feat of Resistance is kind of like
it's busted. That's a modern card in the set that is not modern. That must be. I mean, that was my personal type for the card that will have the highest win rate on 17 lands from the commons in this set. Yeah.
I'll have to give you my prediction after we finish, but like it's
Yeah,
possible.
I'm having a list of each of the cards, and some of them I know already are probably going to be wrong because I had no idea what I'm doing in evaluating this set. Abzan Ascendancy, that's pretty busted, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just obviously busted. It's basically a global pump that means you also don't run out of like creatures if your creatures die. Also, the +1/+1s have a very very meaningful effect on the
So all of a sudden you might give everything flying,
right.
and
Yeah,
lifelink.
it definitely was worth kind of like moving into. Like I remember a lot of good draft decks that were centered around this. That being said, I actually think here's the key problem with ascendancies. I think they're kind of time sensitive. Is when you want to get them out like fast, and if you don't have the mana to do it, like often you'll draw.
Well, this
late.
one I definitely want to wait until I play out at least like 3 creatures in order to play
That's
it
true.
proficient.
That's true. But overall, I think that Abzan has the best card set, and overall, like has payoffs that are worth it, and not all the payoffs are rare. So, like all the +1/+1 stuff, some of them are common, and I think that's really really helpful.
The payoffs, I have hardened scales, but I guess it would be really have to be super hard on +1/+1 counters for hardened scales to be good.
I played it a little bit. It's not bad because like every Outlast card works with it. It gets out of hand quickly. It's not, and the opportunity cost is pretty low because it's 1 mana. I would say it's like you don't need to have it. It's like it's not something that really changes, but sometimes it can snowball.
Retribution of the Ancients, that looks like pretty meh, but you can remove X counters from creatures you control. Target creature gets -X/-X. I don't think you can generate that many counters to be, yeah. But High Sentinels of Arashin, that looks like absolutely broken, busted in half.
Correct.
This 4 mana, 3/4 flyer, and it will probably be like a 5/6. 4 mana Mahamoti Jin. And 4 mana, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and it gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So next turn, you can just basically untap with it. If you don't have anything with a counter, you put a counter on something. And also putting counter on something is great because you have Outlast creatures, which means that they'll be flying or lifelinking or death touching or trampling. Or trampling and death touching, which would be nice combination.
Or first striking and death touching, also a good combination. In general, it's the threat of using this ability that's bigger than the actual use. And I think that's the best thing about it. You can be aggressive with the creature itself. You can leave all your mana up, and the end of turn you do, because 4 mana is expensive for a 1/1 counter. But the fact is that you can do it any time. You kind of like sit in your removal, or you sit in like a morph, and you can kind of like choose how you use your mana. So I think this card is an easy, very good card. I don't think I have anything more to say other than it's very strong. Also, like the other, there's a lot of Abzan cards. Like we've talked about Siege Rhino, Anafenza to some extent, and some of the other creatures like the warrior. Warriors
even
are also
like
black-white.
all the uncommons that in Abzan colors, I saw them and they look like pretty busted. I mean,
yeah, there's
like by busted I mean like a solid B kind of grade by borrowing the scale from some podcasts.
No, I think that's the case. Like we talk about like being a lot of Fs in this set. Abzan is not one of those colors that have
and I'm using the B and the understanding that I have of the modern sets, which makes it even stronger compared to the average common. I mean, it looks pretty well stuck, those things.
Yep.
BWG. I'm just trying to remind myself what was those are. An offense, yeah, Absent Guide, the 6 mana 4/4 lifelinker. That looks pretty solid.
Yeah, no, it's one of those ones when you do unmorph it, it makes up for its own tempo loss because lifelink, like I think people need to be thinking about lifelink as it's a tempo thing because what lifelink does is like extend your half of the game, and so if you're spending mana to make your guy bigger, you've got to kind of make up for the tempo loss that you've had there, and gaining life basically creates that.
You know, you already had like the cards in it was the AFR, the Vampire Spawn, which is not even a lifelink creature. It just has like a sort of hasty lifelink attack as an ETB. And how oppressive was that Drain 2 on it as an ETB? And then you remember the 2/2 lifelinkers for 2 mana from many sets that were always problematic because you can't race that thing.
Yeah.
So you have to stop attacking. And if the other deck wants you to stop attacking, well, they have you exactly where they want you to. And there is no sort of escape that. And so, yeah, that obviously. And then again, Siege Rhino is so good, not because it's a 4/5 for 4 mana, but it's also because it drains for 3. So part of it, it's hasty lifelinking damage. And that stabilizes you so well, especially when you bring like a big body with it that you have to deal with. And you have to dedicate a turn. If you even can deal with it, you dedicate a turn of dealing with it, which means again you don't touch the life total of the opponent and you slow down your development.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
By the way, also Dune Blast, that must be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a major event. I think the World Cup won by the Danes, and it was determined by Dune Blast. I mean, and obviously when you have those kind of like one-sided or I call it one-sided sweeper. It's not exactly one-sided, but it's one-sided in that.
But you're Plague Wind-ish, Plague Wind.
It's Plague Wind-ish because you get to control something. Amazing card. It's actually sometimes it's tough because it's so expensive, but overall still a good card.
What do we have? Mana. Oh yeah, that's important. We're in a 3-color set. 3-color sets can be gained or lost based on how the mana looks like. I did some comparisons with the Streets of New Capenna because that was our last 3-color set. And mana in Khans of Tarkir, I think, is much worse than in Streets of New Capenna. But then on the other hand, Streets of New Capenna's problem was not the mana. The problem of Streets of New Capenna was that the 3-color cards were just not good enough.
That's the key here. Like the differences between the power level of the 3-color cards in this set, they're much higher overall, relative to the cards.
You get this sort of like synergistic. It costs 5 mana, but because it's 3-colored, you get 6 mana of value. But if you get a mono-colored 5 mana spell in Khans of Tarkir, you get sort of 4 mana of value.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's actually beneficial. While in Streets of New Capenna, you can dedicate a lot of time to play like a 3-color 5/5 menace for 6, or you can just play Overseer that's mono white and win.
Yeah, I mean it's weird. I mean, like the fact that the mana fixing was better there, but like the need for it was much less. What I will say here is, I think you often would be pretty okay with taking a tri-land as your first pick in the set. That's kind of how important it is. That being said, obviously, you got to be careful with older sets where if you take too much land, your deck is full of more air just because you've dedicated good picks to land. But I have generally found that most people are very happy with taking 3-color things. I think the 2-color lands are something you don't need to take as aggressively until you know what colors you're in. And I think the banners are basically unplayable insofar as
that was my guess. I put them as last. So I don't know if you know that, but the ALSA as a measurement from 17 lands. That's how late cards go. And normally on 17 lands you see ALSA and it doesn't look at which pack it is from. But every set I look at ALSA, but I look at only specific. Like, what is the ALSA of the card in pack 1? What is the ALSA of the card in pack 2? What is the ALSA of the card in pack 3? And every single set, every single bloody set I analyzed so far, same result. In pack 1, people let the lands, mana fixing, all kinds of stuff like that go much later. But in pack 3, they disappear from the pack like 1.5 picks earlier, because people just panic and say, I don't have fixing, I need my fixing, and they start picking the lands much higher. So I'm sure that this is going to be the case also in Khans of Tarkir. Those tri-lands, those dual lands are going to go much earlier in pack, or much later in pack 1, and then they're going to be going much earlier in pack 3. So if you probably want to get your fixing, focus on it in pack 1.
Yeah.
Probably this is the moment. Like, if you open pack 1, pick one, like a good 3-colored rare and a 2-colored or 3-colored land, you can actually hope to wheel it in pack 1. It will never happen in pack 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying don't take the bomb when it's there, but what I will say is, like, there's often the 3-color land is better than most commons, even if you haven't decided on a color combination yet, because
I assume there is still a 5-color strategy of some sorts.
There is. It's because of how the 3-color cards kind of, like, you often can't. There's a card you can't splash because it's a 3-color card and 2 of the colors are the off colors. So there is. I wouldn't say there's 5-color strategies. I do think there's quite a lot of 4-color strategies. So what these 3-color decks do is allow you to do that. Also,
you could splash like an Abzan card in Sultai deck.
Yes, and I think that's what it opens you up to. Also, it's pretty rare because it essentially contains like 3 different color combinations within each 3-color land. The chance it goes into your deck anyway is much higher overall, because it, compared to, let's say, Swiftwater Cliffs, that only goes into, like, you need to have blue and red. Whereas it's like, even if it was just like a 2-color land, the Frontier Bivouac, there's 3 combinations of decks or color pairs it can go into. So your chance of failure is, again, lower.
Like what? It goes to Sultai, it goes to Jeskai, and it goes to Timur. Yeah.
All right. And then when you think of it...
But Swiftwater Cliffs goes to 2, no? Or does it?
It goes to 2, yes.
Yeah.
Like those goes to 2.
Timur and Jeskai, yeah, of course.
So, but no, you get 4, I think, with... No, you get 2. That's right. 3, sorry.
Yeah, because there is no other blue-green combination.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, but which is weird. It should be, no? Should be a second blue-green combination. The Timur is the second one, obviously.
Yeah.
It's Timur and Sultai, and then there's Jeskai and then again Timur.
Yeah,
so yeah.
Again.
So the 3-color lands, even if they only cover 2 of your colors, are still good.
Yeah, I historically had to take them relatively aggressively. Obviously, you don't want to miss out on, Bs and up. But
okay, but better than any, like, it's a C+ card basically.
I actually think it's
B minus for 3-colored, and probably like C+.
Yes.
Lower C+ for the 2-colored that are from the enemy colors, and probably a C for the allied colors.
Yeah, I think that works out right.
That would be like, because obviously I picked Swiftwater Cliffs for a good reason. The enemy colors, which will be the colors that are not next to each other on the back of the card if you flip them, are going to be more important because of the wedges. So if you pick 2 colors from the opposing color combination, adding 1 color to them, either green or white, will make it into the color combinations within the set. While if you have like a red green will only go in Timur and in this set. and it will not go into any other of the 3 color combinations. So red-green dual land will be exclusively for use for Temur players, and you probably want to only pick it when you are a Temur player, I guess.
Yeah. That's right, and you could let them float through the draft a bit more
because only a Temur player will steal from you, and if it doesn't come back to you, at least you know that there's someone else drafting Temur in your pod, and you might want to start looking for other strategies because Temur is not strong enough to support 2 drafters or something.
Correct.
Cool. Okay, I picked top commons from each color that I thought without playing ever the set, and that I did it yesterday before the set was released, before I did my 1 draft, and I didn't change it despite me very much wanting to change it, especially for the Sultai Scavenger. I picked Feat of Resistance as my top white common, and I'm pretty much convinced this is going to be the top common altogether in terms of win rate on 17 lands.
I think I agree with that. I was just having a quick look. The only
there's the 2/3 raid guide.
Yeah,
is really strong, but I think that Feat of Resistance is just so flexible, and that card was so good already in the M20 or M21, whatever it was. In the
I don't think I'm going to. I think you're right here.
And blue, I picked Treasure Cruise because I think it's going to be pretty high win rate as a one-off in quite strong decks.
Yeah,
especially if it's game in hand, because the problem with this is you want to play only 1 probably, and if you don't draw it, your deck might be much worse. But if you draw it, it will have quite a large improvement on your win rate because you will usually be able to cast it for like 3 mana or so.
Yeah, I think game in hand, you kind of have. It has to be almost by its nature correct. What I will say is, no, I don't really have anything to say. I think you're right. Game in hand kind of makes it particularly good.
Because I don't know what else is there that is good in blue. There's the Jeskai Wind Scout, the 2/1 prowess. That might be pretty cool.
So here's the one that I think is underrated. Maybe is like the 3/2 can't be blocked creature. He's actually very good.
Oh, yeah, the morph that flips into a 3/2 unblockable.
But I don't think I can justify saying Treasure Cruise is better than that card. So, but overall, like as a creature, it's actually one of the more important creatures.
But I mean, when I look at the cards, like 4 mana 2/2 flyer, and for 3 mana you can sacrifice it to deal 2 damage to target creature or player. Wow, this card is in modern standards absolutely unplayable. I don't know if it's playable in the set, but
oh no, I think it's playable in this set. I just don't. Okay. It's not like. It's nothing to write home about.
Black, I had no idea what to do in black. None of the cards really appealed to me, and I decided I can't pick a 1 mana more expensive Deadweight as a top common. But probably it is going to be the 1 mana more expensive Deadweight, isn't it?
I don't think it is. I think there's 2 candidates.
Okay.
One is Rakshasa's Secret. The Mind Rot.
Also, because this is going to be played by the best players because they know what's going on.
Yeah.
If you're playing it, you know what's going on.
The other one is the Mardu Skull Hunter, the one that when it raids discards a card.
I had no idea how to evaluate this card because on the other hand, well, 2 mana 2/1 rat looks good, but also with ETB tapped, which is not great. And also then I thought, well, you have to attack to have the ETB for this card, and there's no one drop. So I had like a lot of conflicting ideas about this particular card.
I'm trying to. I do remember it being good. I'm trying to.
So what do you do? Like you play turn 1, 1 mana 0/4 with Outlast, and then you swing on turn 2 and play this thing. Is that what you're doing?
No. You're generally playing the white Hateblade.
Okay, yeah.
Or the Ripper or something like that, and then swinging with that.
I mean, I guess it's also good like on turn 5 as a 2 spelling kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think 3/3 flying is so underwhelming, like in this kind of set that, like for especially like it's just not high impact enough. I mean, it's not a bad card. I just don't think I don't even think it's close to.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not saying it's a good card. I just like looked at those and I see, oh, there is a 2/8 for 5 mana, and I'm like, I can't decide. 6 mana removal spell that maybe makes a snake. So yeah, it was very hard for me to judge black commons because all of them look so underwhelming, honestly. But I know that. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying black is bad in this format. My personal, because I have a different grading system, my personal grading system is I grade the cards in sort of order of a kind, and then I have a distribution of grades that should be based on the previous sets, and every set will fit the same distribution. So in this set, I would just grade what I would grade D and other set as a C plus or something.
Sure.
But it's still it's going to be a C plus because you only grade the cards in relation to the other cards in the same set. So there's no point of comparing Rotting Mastodon with something from March of the Machine. Still, those cards just like look so hard to evaluate if you're used to modern card quality.
Yeah. No. I think certainly I understand kind of the challenge here.
It's like Throttle. Throttle -4/-4 for 5 mana. We had that card for 2 mana and it was not good recently. Okay, it was black, arguably, but still.
No, you're definitely right. It's just like I think overall, one, I think the Delve cards are like when you want to play a Delve card in your deck, you want something that's a little bit more impactful than this card.
Red, I didn't know what to do. I picked the Leaping Master.
Red is bad in commons. It's not very good at all.
Because it's a 2 mana 2/1, and it can get evasion later. And I actually played with it, and I was quite happy with the card. I don't think it's very, very strong. But I color where I couldn't find anything that was amazing.
So what I will say is, I think the best win in hand card is going to be Arrow Storm. A card that doesn't look amazing.
I couldn't vote for. Look, Arrow Storm is the 5 mana deal 4 damage.
Yes. So
with Raid, it gets upgraded to a very bad card.
No. So this is why the upgrade is important. It upgrades to a Lava Axe.
Oh, because upgraded can deal any target to.
Yes.
I didn't read that through. Okay.
I
thought it was only creature, but it's creature or player. Okay, that makes it much better. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's going to have a lot of game in hand wins because it actually ends the game in many cases. So I think overall you're going to have like. It's very weird. It's like by modern standards, this card's like even considering the hit the player piece, it's not particularly great even by modern standards. But when you think about like how some of these games are going to end, like they're going to kind of stabilize, and you're going to need some way to finish off. And this is a card that does it, even though the raid isn't like. The upgrade is 1 damage, and you can't prevent it.
Okay, I totally missed on that card that it deals to player as well. I only thought, okay, this is just basically deal 4 to creature or deal 5 to creature. And why would you do that? I mean, I played today with the 4/3 vanilla, and it was absolutely fine.
Oh, the 4/3 vanilla is actually a reasonable card in this format, but it's certainly. I think Arrow Storm, because removal isn't that high.
How is the 2 mana haste that needs to attack every turn if able?
Bad.
Okay, it's still bad. Okay, good. That gives me a bit of peace because I thought if that card is strong, then I don't know. But because someone played it against me today, and I'm just like, yeah, I'll play a 3/3, and they attacked, and then I ate it, and it was game over. So okay, it's still bad. Okay, good. Act of treason, is it any use?
I don't think so. I don't remember it being particularly.
There's no sacrifice outlets.
No, I mean for the longest time, Act of Treason was just not a very good card. It wasn't until they did sacrifice as a strategy or had a lot of that, and this set is not built for that.
I did like the Swift Kick. It was not terrible.
It's not terrible.
But not... again, we're talking about a card that is 2-3 mana overcosted to what would it be right now?
Yeah, you've got to lower your standards.
Like we had 1 mana cheaper bite spell that did the same in the last set.
Yeah, I mean, look, Savage Punch is like
Savage Punch,
yeah.
very high quality compared to the Swift Kick. But yeah, Swift Kick was not bad. I played it in some conjunction with blocking and feet today, and it was amazing.
It's just so expensive. It's like it's really really hard for.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this set you get to the mana. You get to the mana. Okay. And then Savage Punch. I guess that looks like a pretty good green common.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. I think Savage Punch. I not only I think on closer look of the set, but actually I remember it being one of the premium green commons at the time. So, like, and obviously the Ferocious is actually a pretty reasonable payoff. Like, it allows you to attack for so much damage. So it allows you to trade up sometimes if you have a smaller creature that's like, so sometimes it allows you to be a bit bigger.
And then for the multicolor, I picked the Efreet Weapon Master. That's a 4/3 first striker, and when it flips, it gives +3/+0 to something until end of turn.
I always remember,
but yeah, I guess it's. I guess looking at it right now, it's probably worse than the Ponyback Brigade. It's probably worse than the Abzan Guide.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's not like it's bad. I just felt like this was. You'd rather have the other two because I think they work better with the decks they're in. And also I think that Jeskai actually doesn't need this kind of ability, and the other ones would prefer to have this ability. Like a first striking, like you don't generally get that much value out of the +3/+0.
I had that problem when I played it today. I had that problem, like, oh, I flip it, and then it's just like, I guess I flip it because it's better as a 4/3.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the problem is that you don't get that much like advantage.
While the Abzan is self-contained, Ponyback Brigade is self-contained. You don't care.
Yeah.
I still think better than the Sultai one.
Yeah, the Sultai one is actually kind of bad. It's like,
and also the Timur one does not appeal me like super because it's just like 5/5 trample.
It does trump them all. That's one benefit.
Yeah,
but in general, not particularly great. I think those two are the worst ones.
Okay, well, then we have. Did I put uncommons?
Did.
Oh yeah, okay. I picked the Seeker of the Way as the top white uncommon.
Totally agree. I think that card's like.
Yeah, that looks pretty strong.
It's first pickable. That's like this card is like an A-. It plays way better than you think it does.
Then Jeskai Elder, probably that's wrong.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find what the card that I would choose. Let me have a look here.
Mistfire Weaver, probably better than that.
Oh, I think Set Adrift is good.
Set Adrift, that's 6 mana delve card, put target non-land permanent on top of its owner library. Yeah, because I guess if they play like a morph, they flip the morph, spend 8 mana, and you for 1 mana just put it on top of their library. That's pretty big blowout.
And it's any permanent, so it's the
okay. Oh, you can put a land.
No, sorry, non-land.
Okay, well, where is Plow Under? Right? That was such a fun card to play. If you plowed under your opponent with 0 cards in hand and watch them frustratingly draw 2 lands in a row. The times.
I still love that kind of stuff.
The salt was real in those days. It was simple time when people were salty to the point where they basically bled through their nose once you did the plow under second time after they played those both nights.
Yeah, kids nowadays don't know how good they have
it. Oh, there's this weird card, Quiet Contemplation. That, I think, looks pretty much bad. That's like the Goblin Maker, but this one makes 3 mana enchantment. Whenever cast a non-creature spell, you may pay 1. If you do, tap target creature and opponent controls and put a stun counter on
it. Which one's this one?
Quiet Contemplation.
I don't remember it being good.
Yeah, it looks like the worst version of the goblin thing.
Yeah.
I guess that the 6 mana 4/5 flying prowess not good because you don't have anything prowess. Is
Yeah,
the
no,
is the O6 good?
I think the OSIC is good, but I find it hard to believe that it's good and better than Set Adrift. I was actually very happy to play Set Adrift for the most part. It's like a removal spell.
Okay, so let's put like Set Adrift there as
Yeah.
your experienced opinion. Black, I put Murderous Cut. That looks pretty.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
good.
think, see if we missed anything. I mean, Murderous Cut's obviously the easiest. One thing I would say is Dead Drop is pretty good, but more situational.
That's the sacrifice 2
Yeah.
for just a good, solid cost of 10 mana. How is the 4 mana 4/5 that you lose 4 life when you play it unless you attack with the creature? It looks
Not
pretty
great.
big.
Yeah, it's not very good.
Okay.
I don't think it's worth playing. I'm pretty sure Murderous Cut's correct, but you could probably make a case if it's pure game in hand that Dead Drop might actually.
Oh, but
Because
maybe maybe you get stuck with the drop in your hand.
yeah, but
if you
it's
can't cast it.
it's more likely to be game ending if it happens. We'll have to see. I'm pretty happy saying Murderous Cut.
And
but
then Raider Spoils, is that a thing or?
Nah, I don't think it's something.
No. Okay, and then red, I picked Arc Lightning because I'm a simple creature.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable case to make his Arc Lightning. What I would say is Maru Heart Piercer is also up there.
That's the 2/3 that thinks for 2.
Yeah, the Flame Kavu. It situationally is better.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's a very similar card. It's Arc Lightning. I assume most of the time it's kill a morph, ping you one for.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem is that it's hard to actually get the kind of 2-for-1 that like Arc Lightning in some formats has.
Yeah.
And so when you say, okay, this is a 3 mana sorcery that kills.
I guess if you're playing against Mardu, you will sometimes kill like a warrior token or something.
Right. But the other one is more likely to create situations where you get 2-for-1s that are meaningful.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I say I'm going to go with Heart Piercer, but I think it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Green again, I was a bit stumped. I thought about the 2 mana 2/2 that has Ferocious with Death Touch, but in the end I went for the incremental growth. The 5 mana put a +1/+1/+1 counter on target creature.
I think this is.
Oh wait, this has to have 3 targets, doesn't it?
It does.
Oh, then that's rubbish.
I don't think it's rubbish.
I mean, it's significantly worse. It's just like nowadays they would have maybe worded it so that.
I think this card was still good back then, and also it's very good in Abzan specifically, because of the counter stuff. I think this card is like still reasonable to say it was. I'm trying to think of what else is there. You could make a case for the trampling Outlast creature.
Okay, yeah.
It's like pretty solid. It's called Tuskguard Captain. I think that's it. I think everything like
Pine Walker.
Pine Walker. I mean, Pine Walker was good. It was good on rate too. I think all those cards are fine.
I think there is at least some things in black. I do like the Heir of the Wilds as a card. It just looks good.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about 2 drops being good. I think that's like part of it, but I also don't know if it matters really.
And then uncommons, I picked Secret Plans, but I mean, actually at uncommon, that's the least of the problem. Like lots of them are really good.
Yeah, I mean, let me quickly have a look here.
There's all the charms. There is the Chief of Scale, Chief of Edge.
Yeah, I mean, you also Ice Feather Aven is very good.
Yeah, that one was a pain to play against. I already learned. I guess Muster the Way is pretty good. I guess Ride Down is pretty good.
Yeah, but no, I don't think so. Sorry, let me be clearer. I don't think Secret Plans is going to be the game in hand winner here. I think it's more likely to be something that can be a bit more proactive. So Ice Feather Avon or a Charm. The Charm is 3-color. And if I said a Charm, it would probably be Abzan Charm.
I guess so. Winter Flame also looks pretty good.
Yeah.
As in sort of like early way of getting advantage on board.
Yeah, but look, Secret Plans is very good. It's kind of cut I like personally. I think it actually requires more setup than not you think, but like that people think. So it's harder for it to be like, I won't say its fail case is that high. It's like pretty easy to use, but not all Secret Plan decks are good.
Yeah, no, I get it. It can lead to more of those kind of train wrecky kind of draft.
Yeah,
Ice Feather Raven, that looks pretty good.
I think that card is good on many levels. I mean, even if you just cast it for 2 mana, it's a 2/2 flyer. It's like beating down very early, and then the bouncing obviously is very, very good too.
Yeah. One card that absolutely mind boggles me is the High Spire Mantis, a 4 mana 3/3 flyer with trample, and it's like, yeah, this set has like 2 flyers, and both of them are like 3/5s. Why do you need trample on this particular flyer?
I mean, trample on flyers is always weird for like not only like it's an addition that doesn't really help very much.
Yeah, it's also like it's flavor wise a bit dodgy. I mean, I'm this gentle flying creature, but I also trample a bit,
Flample, that's what people call it.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a weird card. But still, I think 4 mana 3/3 flyer is good enough in this set.
No, I mean it's definitely good enough. It's not particularly good.
It's not like amazing. It's just like good enough to be
fine. Yes, for sure.
I actually like the 2/3 flyer vigilance creature. That was really good in my games.
Yeah, I think vigilance is pretty good in general because you want to kind of like present blocking as a threat. Because the good thing about blocking as a threat in this format is that because of morphs specifically, and so if people are attacking into you, it gives information. Even if you don't actually block, the fact that like you could block means that they have to kind of like evaluate, oh, is it worth it to untap some, or like to tap out to kill this thing, or like if it's a small thing that stays small, then a lot of players will be very hesitant to attack in general. That's why I think presenting blocks is actually very, very important in this format, because it tells you what's underneath the morph a lot of the time.
It's still like such a weird design. There's basically five signposts, so 2 per each color pair that are enemy colors and nothing in friendly colors. I'm just checking those numbers here.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, well, yeah, and actually, that's what I had in terms of slides. But do you have anything else that you wanted to add on the great topic of Khans of Tarkir?
No, I mean, look, Khans is a fun format, and I think the thing that
okay, the cards are bad. We have established it. The cards compared to the current standards are bad, but obviously, as long as it's a uniform situation, a format can be great if the cards are not really strong enough to be playable and constructed nowadays. So what is like the secret sauce of Khans of Tarkir that makes it a great format, you think?
I think the fact that there's a lot of play on the board. I think when you're talking about good limited sets, you want to have kind of like a lot of ducking and weaving and a lot of kind of like, like understanding what's in the format, understanding what your opponent can do, what they can unmorph, etc., etc. Like that's the thing that's actually makes it really interesting, is that it's a format that kind of rewards like knowledge, and because of the low powered nature of the set, it also gives you enough time to kind of apply that knowledge throughout the games. Now, I will say, I am not sure how good this set is in a best of one framework. I mean, one of the things that I think is very used to, I think sideboarding and limited is like one of the most fun kind of things about limited, like real life limited, because you get to kind of like understand what one, you get to draft sideboards, and when there wasn't like actual sideboard cards, you can kind of say, oh, I should draft an extra high toughness creature in case I play someone who has like, is very aggressive, or I should have an extra 2-drop or a 3-drop or something, whatever. Like the sideboarding decisions in limited compared to constructed are very subtle, and they're about like, you go first, are you playing on the play or the draw? And I think that's really, really interesting. I will say that was part and parcel of Khans when I played it. Now I wonder if being best of one makes that worse. It could. Also, the fact that Street Color might also make it worse on a best of one with the hand smoother specifically. I don't know if
what on Modo, was it already the league system when the Khans were there, or was it still the pod draft?
I think it was still pod draft,
because maybe that was a part of the charm as well. But
yeah, no, I look, I prefer draft in its purest form, but I will play it in any form. And so best of one non-pod draft.
By purest form, you of course mean Rochester.
Oh yes, Rochester is actually the purest form. I mean, it's so funny. I think like Rochester is so unfriendly to casual players.
Oh god!
But as someone who's playing kind of like a reasonable level, it is the amount of interesting things that happen in Rochester and what you can do about like bluffing and signaling and so on and so forth. There's so much like interesting play, but it's very high level, and often it's all in people's heads rather than actually something people can appreciate very easily.
I think that it would be okay as a coverage, if not for the fact that it lasts like 7 hours or something.
Yeah, it takes a long time. I mean, look.
But for the viewers, when they can see every pick and every decision, that might have been actually something. It's just like no one has time to watch 3 hours of draft.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love it. I would absolutely, if they were having a Rochester Grand Prix or equivalent, I would probably travel for it, no matter what it was. But overall, it's probably for the better that it doesn't exist.
See, but good. I somehow put you on the Rochester draft aficionado, and I'm happy that I nailed it. As obviously, yeah. There is so much you can gain from pod drafting in terms of the subtlety of the game and those little edges. And sideboarding is definitely something that is underplayed, and gives you those extra. Like we're talking, boosting you this extra percentage point, the extra 2 percentage points, if you know that you can maybe sideboard differently for the games you're on the draw, when you know that you're on the draw, when you are on the play, and you change your plan ever so slightly. And I'm not even talking like transformational sideboards that you sometimes will be able to pull out when you basically replace the whole color because your deck aligns badly against certain strategies, and you know that having extra 4 cards from a different color, swapping all the basics and whatnot, will put you in a better situation. But best of one, we're losing it a bit. However, I did play it in best of one, and it seemed interesting. I think that what it does have, what current sets don't have, is the games last long enough for A to B synergies come together on occasions. Because I think that the big problem with the Scry deck from Lord of the Rings or a couple of other decks that had those A plus B synergies recently, you just don't have enough time to assemble them because the first connection is going to be interrupted with removal, and second connection will be done 2 turns after you're dead.
Yes, I think that's the beauty of like inefficient cards. Inefficient cards like allow for more kind of like interaction, allow for more combination, allow for more kind of like strategy, because like you're more likely to get to, I'll call it kind of like neutral positions if the game is slower. Because like everything is kind of punch and counter punch, like if you have slower formats, whereas you generally get like snowball. Like modern sets have a lot of snowball mechanics and a lot of snowball sizing of creatures, and that's problematic. Like think of it this way: nearly every modern set has playable limited one drops. This used to be very much a limited truism that one drops were bad in like in draft and sealed. But now it's actually like
Ashing Thraben Inspector here.
Yeah, I mean, like, and nowadays actually, like, if you don't get to the board on turn one, like sometimes you're already running.
Oh my god, I'm so much behind. I didn't have a one drop.
Right, and that's just not the case. I mean, like, probably not until like kind of just the beginning of pandemic did kind of the one drop really be.
Yeah, I do remember that shift, because I never was in that never play one drops heuristic. Was not something I was aware of, because I just started Dominaria or something. I didn't have enough knowledge for that.
Yeah.
For me, one drops are okay. You can play Carnophage. You can play Carnophages. That's not a problem. You're gonna die, but you can play Carnophages. Yeah, well, I mean, it's been great. I hope that the viewers found it informative to get your insights on Khans of Tarkir. I definitely learned quite a lot. I'm much more ready for playing. Where can people find you, and why should they do it?
I mean, really, mostly I'm on X or at TBS I not doing any current regular content creation, but that might change in the future. But like, you'll be able to catch up with me or interact with me on Twitter, and I'm more than happy to kind of like you'll generally hear me like talking about the old days when it comes to Magic, because I like to kind of like take that framing of like what
are you a pre-modern player?
I mean, I think theoretically I would be. I just don't have like I have such a limited amount of time to play Magic, so it feels like I don't care to spend it. Like, I like playing competitive Magic, and there's not a lot of pre-modern in my area. Like, I live in London. It's so I'll play modern and stuff like that because that's kind of the competitive. Like, I enjoy the competitive aspect, and so tournaments and stuff like that like matter to me, and I occasionally would like to play in a pro tour whenever I can. So while I appreciate pre-modern, and whenever someone posts a deck I like looking at it, I generally don't play it. But I do love that era of Magic. I think pre-modern Magic is kind of like pure Magic in many ways. I mean, like I think after kind of the brokenness of the early years have kind of been dealt with, and we're talking about this kind of mid-level Magic. Like, again, just like we're talking about here, the formats are slower, the cards are less powerful, and so there's more interactions and there's more kind of just like play in the game.
It's pure cards. Stone Rain, Pillage, Avalanche Riders.
That's right. Nothing better than Stone Rain.
And then at the end of it, just chuck in a Plow Under for good measure.
I mean, you do you. Plow Under. I mean, I have Plow Under in my time. I do enjoy a little bit of land destruction, but be on the other side of that, it's not the fun. It's not the most fun.
Well, it is fun for one person. The other person is just banging their head on the table. Well, thank you so much, and thanks, chat, for patiently listening. Also, I would like to thank 17 Lands team because they always are useful for what I'm doing. And thanks to Fake Jake Brown, again misspelled because I copied the slides with the misspelled version of his name. That happens roughly 75 to 25% right now, but add the E at the end of it. And with that, I'll see you next week when we actually are going to look at some data for Khans of Tarkir and see which of the predictions and which of the wisdom from the players from before data era turned out to be spot on, and which ones were absolute rubbish. Boo. Punditry is worth nothing. We're going to see that next week. See you then.